Good afternoon. As we go into the scriptures, it is really important that we begin with the foundations. And in Genesis, we have the presuppositions, the framework that gives context for all of our biblical Christian thinking and action. As we look at the first chapters, the opening pages of Genesis, we'll see in the story something noteworthy, that men and women have a shared origin, have a shared value, have a shared destiny, have a shared failure, and a promised shared redemption. Let's look at these points together. First of all, they have a shared origin. When we look at the first two chapters, we must recognize that there are really three stories of creation, just like in the Gospels. One gospel, but four different versions. So in the first story, in Genesis 1:1-2, the message is, who created? The answer is God. In Genesis 1:3-2:3, it's what was created. And it goes through 7 days, telling in each day what happened. The third story is in Genesis 2:4 to the end of the chapter. And the focus is, how did he create? Particularly the second half of the sixth day when male and female were created. It is an expansion, if you were, of Genesis 1:26 and 27. So if you were to read it chronologically, you'd read that right there at that point in Genesis 1. The thing that is extraordinary in that passage is that when God makes woman, first he made Adam, and then he makes woman, he takes her from his side. In other words, she's made of the same stuff, the same DNA, the exact same material. It's God, the author, the creator, with the same design making her. Some would ask, well, why didn't he use dirt and breath like he did with Adam? Well, one could have supposedly said, well, the second pile of dirt that he picked was not quite as good as the first pile of dirt. But he didn't want to make sure that we understood that was exactly the same thing. That's why he took her from his side. They had a shared origin and definitely a shared value. When you read these first two chapters in chronological order, you see that after every act of creation, God stands back and evaluates what he has done. So he makes light, looks at it and says, it is good. And in the first 5.5 days, 6 times God says, it is good, 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 it is good. In the second half of the 6th day, he has made Adam. He looks down and evaluates what he has made. And for the first time in the whole process, he says, it is not good. That man should be alone. And so he proceeds to make Eve. And once Eve is together with Adam, we revert back to the chronology of the story in Genesis 1:28 and through 31, and he says, and it was very good. Okay, let's get that picture again. Good, 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 good. He creates Adam, not good. He adds Eve, very good. This is just observation of the text. It does add a cause for a little more humility in us, gentlemen. Some people say, well, because man was created first, he's obviously more valuable. But then you think, well, before man was created, frogs and donkeys were created too, earlier in the day. So apparently, he's building toward the crown of creation, and the ultimate gem in the crown is woman. So there's this great value. And Adam, the first time he sees Eve, he explodes into poetry. And he says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. In other words, it was a celebration of unity, of oneness, of sharedness. They obviously had, let me add here too, that when God creates Eve, he says that he needed help. And so he creates a helper for him. Now, sometimes that word helper for us, we seem to think of someone subservient. You know, this is the boss, and that's the helper. And most of us would like to be the boss. But think about when you have a problem back in school. If you were having a math exam. How many of you detested math exams? Okay, I see a lot of honest hands there. And you know, you've got to pass this math exam, so you need someone to help you. And you look for a classmate. Who are you going to look for? Someone smarter or not as smart as you? Someone more capable or less capable? You know, you go for the one who could really assist you. Imagine if at school you were, there was a bully who would regularly try to beat you up on the way home. You needed help. So who would you go after? Someone skinnier and weaker and smaller than you? Or someone bigger and stronger or more capable than you? You'd want the big one to be your bodyguard, wouldn't you? So when we need help, we look for the most capable. The word here in Hebrew is ezer. And this is a very powerful word. It's used, except for this passage, almost exclusively of God. He is called our Ebenezer, the one who has helped us to the present. Psalm 121 says, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my ezer, my help, come from? It comes from the Lord. He undoubtedly is not the weaker in the pairing of relationship between he and us. And so this is a word of great power, of great dignity. Thankfully, God modified this word with an adjective in Hebrew, says keneged. Keneged means who is a peer, who is an equal, who is a partner. If we had not modified that word, we would not be asking today, are women allowed to partner with men? We'd have to be asking, are men even capable of partnering with women? Because of God in His goodness, He designed us to work together, to be a team. That was the origin and the value. And He gave us, as a result, a shared destiny. In Genesis 1:28, when we go back to that first chapter, it says, and God said to them, blessed them and said to them. We are aware that at this point, both Adam and Eve are present. It is plural. And He says, fill the earth, multiply, be fruitful. And He says, rule over all. This commandment of multiplication, of governing, of rulership, of leadership was given to Adam and Eve jointly. This was always God's purpose as we see the story. But then, sadly, the tale does not end at the end of chapter 2. We have to read chapter 3, and you know that there in the garden, a serpent slithers in and begins a conversation. As we read the conversation, we are a bit disadvantaged in the English language because we only have one term for the word you. You can mean either you individually as one person, Debbie, right here on the front row, or it can mean you, all of you, several hundred of you. It can be both singular and plural. In Hebrew, as in many other languages, there is no such there's no such confusion. It is very clear because there's a different verb form for the singular you and a different one for the plural. And it's interesting in the Hebrew, every time that the serpent speaks, he uses the plural you. This would only make sense if Eve was not standing there by herself. Otherwise, there's an incongruency. It just doesn't make sense linguistically. But we just get this as a hint in the text until we get to verse 6. And it says this. Eve took some and ate it, but she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. It seems like this whole time, Adam was by her side, but he did not join in combating the ideas that Satan was presenting. Eve alone defended the cause, and finally, both of them fell. Sometimes we put the blame on only one member of this team, but both, male and female, are guilty of the sin that entered the world. Thankfully, again, the story does not end there. God appears on the scene and He begins speaking. He speaks to the serpent, He speaks to the woman, He speaks to the man. And in this passage in Genesis 3:14 to 19, often known as the curse, God describes the consequences of their sin. It's not that it's going to be finished. It's not that this is going to be his purpose. This was not his will, but this is the result of sin, and it is destruction. And so he says that there will be suffering, there will be pain, there will be relational stress. But in the midst of that sad assessment, here's the first prophecy of Messiah Jesus, that the seed of Eve will come and redeem and break that curse. Galatians 4 and Galatians 3, Paul picks up this theme. God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under law, to redeem those under the law. Christ redeemed us from the curse by becoming a curse for us. Thanks be to Jesus Christ, who made us with shared origin, shared value, shared destiny. And when we blew it together, he came to redeem us. I want to introduce to you Edwin, who will share how this message has changed his life.
I grew up in a very male-dominated society and culture. And I'm the youngest of 10 children. We are 8 boys and 2 girls. It's a very average-sized African family. It was during my teenage years that I understood and saw the horrors of separation, segregation, and apartheid in my beloved South Africa. I experienced firsthand the horrors, the pain that comes from exclusion. I was regarded as less human and was considered as someone with no value and no destiny. This pain led to bitterness and violence. It was at that particular time in my teenage years, in high school, being part of the riots in a very dark season of our history in the mid-80s, that an all-girl and all-white YWAM team, Christian group, came to my school assembly. That represented everything that I hated. But something was different about this team. There was an attraction that I could not understand. Now, this is not the normal attraction of a young boy seeing a lot of young girls. This was something much deeper. I've never felt so valued, so accepted, so loved, and that love was genuine. I spent a week with them in a Bible study, and it was in that encounter that I met the Lord Jesus, that I experienced his healing, his incredible redemption, and I became a follower of him and received my missions call. I became part of joining this group, not for the girls, but I found my wife in the same organization. In my last 24 years in missions, God took me from a small African village to 55 different nations. My mother, when I left, she said to me, I don't want you to rely on anyone, and particularly not white people. Here is $10. 24 years later, I still have some change from that $10 my mother gave me. I can testify today that women had a major impact in my release and in my destiny in missions. My mother is one of them, and also many other incredible women in my life, as I have seen them serving shoulder to shoulder with their husbands, some even giving up what you would consider their rights, and even take care of the menial tasks of the domestic chores and taking care of the children so that their wives could be released into what God has gifted and called them to do. And so one of these particular heroes of mine has trained hundreds of young leaders. Indalene Cunningham, the co-founder of our mission. And I met her for the first time in 1991 in Santiago, Chile. And she just had a few seconds with me as she encountered this South African boy and said, "You've got a destiny for the nations." And through her modeling and others, I found my place in God, that God is a God of inclusion and not of exclusion. The same pain of segregation can be the same pain when it comes to gender discrimination. Amen.